Welcome back to the Watercooler, everybody. All right, let's discuss mail-in balloting, and how about we start with this? There's a huge difference between absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. Anybody that tells you something different is not being truthful. That's just accurate. If President Trump ends up on the losing end of November's election, he is clearly laying the groundwork that massive voter fraud would be the reason. Mr. Trump says that due to the fact that we're about to experience massive mail-in balloting in America, the likes of which we've never seen before, means there could be trouble on the horizon. And of course, some states are actually just mailing ballots to voters, even if they didn't request them. Joining us now is Eric Eggers. He's the author of the book, Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. Eric, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
David, great to be here.
Well, you say the next election, which is this election, and now what do you make of what we might see on election night? This could get ugly real fast. What is your sense of what could transpire on election night?
I think there will be a lot of transpiring on election night. I think that we're going to have long delays, and I think considering how close it was in 2016 and considering the passion that's going to be on both sides, and considering, as you noted, the massive increase in ballots that are being mailed, whether it's because of absentee balloting or because states are now mailing everyone a ballot and asking them to send them back in. What we've seen so far in the primaries is that in the states in which that's happened, we've seen big time delays. Like the city of Philadelphia had to pause their counting a week after their primary to make sure double votes hadn't occurred. Turned out they had. California didn't certify their election until a long time after their primary. So I think what we can expect to happen on election night is lots of stories of potential election malfeasance, as we're already seeing, and lots of delays. And sadly, neither of those combine for a lot of confidence in whatever result we see on a Tuesday night.
What about the pushback to that, Eric? In other words, Democrats, liberals will say, look, it's just a hiccup here, a hiccup there. It's not going to amount to really anything. I mean, this idea of massive mail-in voter fraud just is a bridge too far. It's not happening at all. And they think these are just kind of isolated incidents.
Well, David, I'm old enough to remember a presidential election that was decided by fewer than 600 votes this century. So the idea that it takes some millions of votes to be altered or ditched or whatever it is, as we're seeing, the stories are, everywhere, literally every corner of the country, we're seeing stories about ballots in a ditch. Ballot harvesting has been legalized in Michigan, right? Ballots are being stolen out of mailboxes in New Jersey. So, how many does it take to swing an election? You've got the state that this election is going to come down to about 6 states, many of which were decided by 5 figures at the most in 2016. So if you're asking me, do I think it's possible that we could see voter fraud happen on a scale to swing an election? I don't see how you couldn't see that, considering, again, we've seen presidential elections swung by 3 figures worth of votes this century.
So take me through these voter rolls that we hear so much about, the accuracy or the lack thereof when it comes to the voter rolls, and how that will impact mail-in balloting, because in essence, and it's not every state that's doing this, but there are a handful of states, Nevada and others, basically sending ballots to every registered voter in the state, which could be your cat and my dead relative. I mean, who the heck knows? So explain the voter rolls and how that could impact all of this.
Well, condolences on your relative, David, but absolutely,
Thank
right?
you.
Just because
condolences on your cat.
Sadly, but they can both maybe still vote, or they both still may receive an election, or they may both still receive a ballot, and that's just the reality, right? We're seeing reports of people, that've long been deceased receiving absentee ballots or ballot request forms, and that's because, as you noted, the voter rolls are insanely bloated. The Supreme Court has cited statistics from the Pew Center in which it said 1 out of 8 voter registrations, or 24 million, are wrong or completely inaccurate. So we know there are problems on America's voter rolls, and then when you send everybody on a voter roll a ballot, then it only allows for the scenarios that we see where you got ballot harvesters that can go out and they know where the ballots are going to go. They go collect them. Sometimes even when it's a legal voter on the voter roll, like a senior citizen, those ballot gets harvested in a practice known as granny farming. So, right, we've seen lots of lawsuits filed over these voter roll bloats. States are often reluctant to clean them up, as they've been in the state of Michigan, right? There was a lawsuit filed just last year that said there were over 30,000 more registered voters in the city of Detroit than there were citizens of legal voting age. And when you consider that that's more than the margin of victory for Donald Trump in the state of Michigan in 2016, it's not hard to see how voter roll bloat could cause electoral night problems.
Let me ask you a question. It's my last one here to you, Eric. Hogan Gidley, the press secretary for the Donald Trump's campaign, was on earlier this week, and he said this. He was talking about prepaid postage is not date stamped when it goes through the post office. So there is this speculation that, hey, if it's not date stamped, that could mean that a lot of folks will just say, you know what, let's throw in some ballots, after the fact. Is there any credibility to that?
Well, I think what the very real problem that he raises is the idea that we are no longer beholden to the sanctity and security of an actual elections office, right, or the voter booth itself, right, where you've got people that set up things and rules. If we're now saying that ballots will be accepted as long as they're post-dated or postmarked by election night, we're now talking about, well, what's the security threshold to get a postage stamp versus and a postmark versus the electoral and security threshold of actually casting a ballot? And they seem to me to be very different things. So I think it's correct to raise concerns and ask questions about just how secure is a postage date.
Eric Eggers, listen, I know I messed up the name. It's probably not the first time someone's probably messed up your name, but I appreciate it, sir. Eric Eggers, thanks so much for being here.
You got the name of the book right, no problem.
Okay, yeah. Now there it is. Do we have it? Fraud, how the left plans to steal the next election. All right, fantastic. All right, we're back in a moment with today's last sip. My take on tonight's big presidential debate. Stay with us.